There are moments in history that exist somewhere between myth and memory, whispered stories that feel too extraordinary to be true, yet too real to forget. For martial arts fans, one such moment has lingered for decades: the rumored real fight between Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris. Two men, two legends, not actors this time, not choreographers of fantasy, but warriors bound by mutual respect, yet divided by philosophy. What happened when the dragon met the American cowboy? The 1960s were an age of revolution, not just in politics or music, but in motion. The Western world was discovering the power of the East, and nowhere was that awakening more visible than in the world of martial arts. Enter Bruce Lee. Born in San Francisco, raised in Hong Kong, and forged between two cultures. To some, he was a philosopher, to others, a fighter, to all, a force of nature. Lee once said, "I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, but the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times." That wasn't a quote, it was his life's method. Relentless refinement, constant evolution. At the same time, halfway across the Pacific, another figure was rising. Chuck Norris, a disciplined young man from Oklahoma, had served in the US Air Force, stationed in South Korea. It was there, amid the dust and discipline of a foreign land, that he first encountered Tang Soo Do and fell in love with it. By the late 1960s, Norris was already a multiple-time karate champion, known for his precision, humility, and quiet strength. Where Bruce Lee was explosive, philosophical, unpredictable, Chuck Norris was structured, measured, and traditional. Different routes, same goal, mastery. Fate brought them together not in a dojo, but in Hollywood. By 1968, Bruce Lee had already revolutionized how martial arts were seen on screen. He choreographed fights like poetry, motion that told a story. His brief role as Kato in The Green Hornet had turned heads, and his reputation in martial arts circles was unmatched. Chuck Norris, meanwhile, was just starting to appear in films, balancing his time between competition and cinema. When the two men met, what began as curiosity quickly turned into mutual respect. Bruce saw in Chuck a purity of discipline. Chuck saw in Bruce an intensity of purpose. For years they trained together, sometimes for hours on end, exchanging ideas, testing philosophies. Chuck once recalled, Bruce was a perfectionist. If something didn't feel right, we'd do it again and again until it was. But he never wanted to be better than you. He wanted both of you to rise. But in the martial arts world, there's always a question that lingers beneath respect. Who would win if it were real? It's hard to trace where the rumor began. Some say it happened quietly, behind closed doors at a Lowe's Angels dojo, no cameras, no audience. Others claim it was during a break from filming Way of the Dragon, the 1972 movie that immortalized their cinematic duel. But what we know, what has been whispered by those who were there, is that one evening, Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris decided to test themselves. Not for fame, not for cameras, but for truth. For Bruce, fighting wasn't about dominance. It was a form of expression, honestly expressing yourself, as he called it. For Chuck, it was about balance, honor, and respect. That night, those worlds met. Imagine the room, dimly lit, no crowd. Just two men standing barefoot on polished wood, the quiet hum of Lowe's Angels outside. Bruce, lean, feline, eyes sharp as blades. Chuck, solid, calm, the embodiment of controlled power. There are no records of what truly happened that night. No footage that history can verify. Only fragments, echoes from those who claim to have seen it. What they describe is not violence, but artistry. A duel of rhythm and silence. A test not of who was stronger, but whose philosophy would prevail. Bruce's Jeet Kune Do was fluid, unpredictable, born from his belief that rigidity was the enemy of progress. Chuck's karate was structured, refined, rooted in decades of discipline and repetition. And somewhere in the middle, between speed and stillness, power and patience, they found each other. The fight was said to have lasted several minutes. No referee, no winner declared, just a nod, a shared smile. Two men walking away, knowing they had touched something greater than victory. What made that meeting legendary wasn't the physical exchange, it was the ideological one. Bruce believed that martial arts must evolve. He challenged tradition, questioning why fighters clung to form instead of freedom. He said, "Be water, my friend. Empty your mind. Formless, shapeless like water." To many traditionalists, that was blasphemy, but to Bruce, it was liberation. Chuck, meanwhile, stood for the honor of form. To him, discipline was the essence of respect, a respect for the art, the teacher, the lineage. In their sparring, what clashed wasn't ego, it was philosophy. And yet, they both found truth in each other. Chuck later said, "Bruce taught me that martial arts was more than just combat, it was personal growth." And Bruce, in turn, admired Chuck's calm strength. He once told a friend, "Norris fights like a man who has nothing to prove." That balance between form and freedom became the bridge that changed modern martial arts forever. A year later, their friendship turned into film history. The Way of the Dragon, 1972. Rome, an ancient Colosseum. Bruce Lee versus Chuck Norris. The scene they created remains one of the greatest cinematic duels of all time, raw, human, and real. Every strike, every breath, every glance carried the weight of their philosophies. It wasn't just choreography, it was a message. Bruce used cinema not just to entertain, but to teach. And Chuck played his part with grace, not as a villain, but as a worthy rival. That fight, whether inspired by truth or pure art, became the symbol of what martial arts could be. Mutual respect wrapped in fire. 1 year later, the world lost Bruce Lee. He was just 32, a heartbeat of a man whose energy still echoes through time. Chuck Norris was among those deeply affected. He said later, "The world lost a great martial artist, yes, but more than that, it lost a teacher." For Chuck, Bruce's passing was not an end, but a calling. He continued to promote martial arts with humility and integrity, building a career that carried Bruce's influence into the next generation. Through the 1970s and beyond, Chuck became the face of American martial arts, movies, tournaments, philosophy. But he never forgot the man who had challenged him to think beyond style. Bruce Lee's influence spread across the world through film, philosophy, and movement. From Hollywood to Hong Kong, he had rewritten what it meant to fight and to feel. So, did the real fight truly happen? The honest answer: we may never know. Some say it was nothing more than intense sparring. Others swear it was a test of will, hidden from the public eye. But maybe that uncertainty is the point. Because what made Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris remarkable wasn't the possibility of a winner. It was what they represented. Two men from opposite worlds, East and West, philosophy and tradition, meeting not to destroy, but to understand. In a world obsessed with conflict, they showed what respect could look like even in battle. History remembers their fight as legend. But perhaps the real story isn't about fists at all. It's about connection. About two souls dedicated to mastery, meeting in a moment that transcended competition. Bruce Lee taught the world that fighting is not about aggression, it's about expression. Chuck Norris taught that true strength is not in dominance, it's in discipline. And together, they showed that the ultimate victory is understanding. Because in the end, every great fight, whether real or imagined, is a mirror. It reflects who we are, what we fear, and what we hope to become. So maybe the truth of that night doesn't live in footage or film reels. Maybe it lives in the stories we tell and the lessons we keep. As Bruce once said, the key to immortality is first living a life worth remembering. And that both he and Chuck did. In respect, there is victory. In legacy, there is peace.